The diesel engine that's used today in everything from trucks to submarines goes way back to a time when most everything, including ships, trains, and factories, were powered by steam. But steam had a huge problem. The engines that used it tended to be extremely inefficient. Rudolf Diesel felt that he could change things, that he could fix the issue of steam engines with his diesel engine. But while his engine would bring him vast success and wealth, with the widespread adoption of his far more efficient engine, as he was heading to meet with the British government to get it into their submarines ahead of World War I, his life would be cut short. He would mysteriously vanish while crossing the English Channel. But despite the conspiracy theories that surrounded his likely death, news that would come forward over the next month would make everyone reconsider what they thought they knew about the enigmatic inventor. This is the story of Rudolf Diesel, and this is Learn Something New. Rudolf Diesel was born in Paris, France on March 18, 1858 to parents who had immigrated to France from Bavaria. Though when the Franco-German War broke out, the family was deported, moving from France to England in 1870. There, Diesel would work for his father, helping the struggling family make ends meet. He would push customer goods around town, delivering them door to door. His parents would eventually send him to Germany to live with his aunt and uncle to learn their native language, exposing Diesel to many mathematical concepts at a very early age since his uncle was a math professor. In fact, much of his schooling came very easily to him, though not just math and science. Diesel would prove himself to be an incredibly gifted pianist during his youth as well. Before long, he had accepted a scholarship to go to college at the Royal Bavarian Polytechnic Institute of Munich. Though this act of continuing his schooling would cause a rift in his family, since his parents had insisted he move back to London and enter the workforce there. But Rudolf insisted on continuing his education. There, he excelled in all his engineering classes. But just before his final exams, typhoid swept through the community and landed Diesel in the hospital, forcing him to delay his graduation until 6 months after the rest of his peers. Though after graduating, he easily found work at the Lind Ice Machine Company back in Paris, where they were working on pioneering refrigeration technology in 1880. Although the majority of his studies had focused on thermodynamics, Diesel felt drawn to the emerging designs of engines. Keep in mind, this was still 6 years before the first car was invented. Massive engines powered by steam could do some amazing things for the time, like power trains, large factories, pumps for getting water out of mines, and steamships. But anything smaller than that was pretty much out of the question. Transportation within cities still depended largely on horses, and smaller companies who were trying to compete with the behemoth factories found themselves struggling, being unable to use the expensive steam engines to work quicker and more reliably than humans. Some engineers felt that the new internal combustion engine being developed might be a more viable path forward, but both the internal combustion engine and the steam engine were only able to convert around 10% of heat into useful work. Diesel felt that this percentage could reliably be greatly increased, at one point early on believing that a theoretical 100% efficient engine would be possible, though he quickly found out in practice that it would be impossible. Even while working as a refrigeration engineer, Diesel tinkered with numerous engine designs, but due to his background in thermodynamics, he kept coming back to the idea of using the laws of thermodynamics to create a more efficient engine. But his very first engine prototype nearly killed him after an explosion landed him in the hospital for months, causing him lasting vision issues. But after recovering sufficiently and getting a promotion at his day job, he would move his family to Berlin, where he would get numerous patents on behalf of the Lind Ice Machine Company during the day, and after work, partner with a local company to help develop his engine designs. After years of trial and error, Diesel applied for a patent in 1892 for a diesel engine. In 1893, he published a paper on his designs, and on August 10, 1893, Rudolf Diesel successfully got an engine to run on its own power for the very first time. After the successful test, he claimed that while steam engines at the time wasted 90% of their fuel's energy, his compression engine had a theoretical efficiency of 75%. Once again, however, this number would prove to be fairly optimistic, as his test on February 17, 1897 showed that the engine had an efficiency of 26.2%. Despite not being anywhere near the 75% prediction, it was still far more efficient than the steam engine, and recognized as a major leap forward in engine technology. More companies, like the Sulzer brothers of Switzerland, began to take an interest in Diesel's engine design, producing their first diesel engine in 1898. It was this same year that Diesel licensed his engine to be used to power a ship for a Russian oil company. Despite cars being introduced to the world at a larger scale by this time, the diesel engine wasn't really considered useful for them, because the engines were so incredibly large. But it certainly doesn't mean that there wasn't any use. Diesel engines tended to be expensive to produce, and thus expensive for the end customer to buy, but they tended to also be cheaper to run, making them more cost-effective in the long run. This was in part because diesel engines, being a compression engine, could run off of heavier fuels, which needed less refinement than gasoline, making the fuel cheaper. It also tended to give off fewer fumes, meaning it was less likely to explode. Early on, this made the most sense for shipping companies, whether by train or by water, but very quickly, factories, oil fields, mines, and later on, tractors began to adopt the engine. But despite the positive aspects, it definitely had some drawbacks, as the earliest iterations of the engine were plagued with reliability issues. Regardless, after premiering the engine at the 1900 World's Fair in Paris, Diesel became a wealthy man, believed to have amassed a fortune of $2.5 million in just a few years. And an increasingly large customer base for Diesel were military powers, as in 1904, Diesel managed to get his engines into France's submarines ahead of World War I. As time went on, it seemed like things could not be better for Diesel. In 1913, as World War I was close to kicking off, Diesel had a personal success. For years, he had been saying that few factories in the world were able to mass-produce diesel engines to the proper specifications, but this year saw the opening of a new diesel engine plant in Belgium that could change that. He left from the groundbreaking of that factory and was on a ship sailing back to London to meet with the British Navy about installing engines on their submarines, as he had done with the French, but he would never make it. During that trip, he vanished into the night after retiring to his cabin. Papers throughout Europe, upon hearing the news of his disappearance, immediately began printing conspiracy theories. One newspaper stated that he may have been thrown into the ocean to stop the British government from getting the engines for their submarines before the start of World War I. Another speculated that John Rockefeller had been behind Diesel's death, since in the past year, Diesel had said that he envisioned a new version of his engine that would see vegetable oils becoming just as important a source of fuel as oil, which the oil magnate Rockefeller would have taken issue with. But just 10 days after going missing, a body was found floating in the ocean. It was badly decomposed, but had numerous items on it. Items that Diesel's son would identify as his father's. Strangely, however, after the crew took the items off the body, they tossed the man back into the ocean, never to be seen again. Despite the conspiracy theories, after the death of Rudolf Diesel, creditors came forward to reveal the true state of his finances. Diesel wasn't as rich as people believed. Those unreliable early engines that were expensive to produce, many of those customers had been asking for refunds after newer, better versions came out. The money Diesel did have was largely squandered on bad investments, and at the time of his death, he owed around $375,000 with tangible assets of around $10,000. Combine this with the fact that the original patents for his engine expired in 1912, it meant that other engineers were coming forward with different iterations of his invention, some even more reliable or more efficient. All these factors led many to believe that Rudolf Diesel most likely took his own life. The invention which today bears his name continued on, however, getting improvements and widespread adoption over the coming decades. It would be used in nearly every type of vehicle. Even today, it still has widespread use, and is still more efficient than a regular gas-powered engine. Diesel never got to see the final form of his invention, but it never seemed like he believed there would be a final form. Even as he neared his untimely death, he was looking into alternative sources of fuel, with designs for engines powered by everything from vegetable oils to solar power. In iterating on both his diesel engine designs and looking into new sources of energy, his legacy and mission to innovate better sources of power are kept alive. Thank you for watching Learn Something New. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. And if you want to help out the channel further, please consider checking out the channel's Patreon, linked below in the description. A very special thanks to the channel's patrons for their unwavering support in making these videos possible. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.